The moment those blue lights hit your rearview mirror, everything changes. Your grip tightens on the steering wheel. Your mind starts racing. What did I do? Was I speeding? Did I miss a sign? You glance at the speedometer even though it's already too late. Then comes that slow, uneasy pull to the shoulder, the silence inside your car suddenly feeling louder than anything outside. Now let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself when you answer this. Have you ever been pulled over and felt like things were escalating even though you didn't actually do anything wrong? Drop your answer in the comments because what I'm about to walk you through might completely change how you see those interactions. And there's one specific mistake most drivers make that I'll break down later that can quietly turn a simple stop into a serious situation. What happened in this Florida case isn't just about one bad stop. It's about a pattern that a lot of people don't realize is happening until they're already caught in it. Deputies detaining everyone at a stop, not based on clear evidence, but based on suspicion, control, and sometimes just momentum. And when it gets caught on camera, that's when everything starts to unravel. Picture this. A vehicle gets pulled over. Maybe it's late evening, maybe it's broad daylight, it doesn't really matter. The officer approaches slowly, one hand near their belt, scanning the interior. That part is normal. Officers are trained to read everything within seconds. Who's moving? Who's avoiding eye contact? Who's too calm? Who's too nervous? The driver rolls down the window. Before anything else, there's usually that pause. That brief silence where both sides are measuring each other. Do you know why I stopped you? That question right there? It's not casual conversation. It's strategic. Officers ask it because they're trying to get you to admit something, even if you're not aware of it. Most people respond instinctively. Was I speeding? Or did I do something wrong? And right there, you've already stepped into their frame. But in this situation, things didn't stop with the driver. This is where it starts getting uncomfortable. The deputies begin interacting with everyone in the vehicle, not just identifying them, but questioning them, separating them mentally, sometimes physically, asking similar questions in slightly different ways, watching for inconsistencies, watching for hesitation. Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? How long have you known each other? Now here's what most people don't realize. Those questions aren't about the traffic stop anymore. They're fishing. They're building a narrative. And if they don't get one handed to them, they start looking harder. In the Florida incident, what raised eyebrows wasn't just the questioning. It was the detaining of everyone involved without a clear, articulated reason. That's where things shift legally and practically. Because there's a difference between a temporary traffic stop and a detention that extends beyond its original purpose. Officers are allowed to control a scene for safety, that's true. They can ask for identification. They can observe. They can even ask you to step out of the vehicle under certain circumstances. But what they cannot do, at least not lawfully, is extend that detention without reasonable suspicion of a crime beyond the initial reason for the stop. And here's where things get messy in real life. Because reasonable suspicion is not always clear-cut in the moment. It's often based on behavior, tone, timing, body language. If you seem nervous, that can be used. If your answers don't line up perfectly, that can be used. If someone in the car gives a different destination, that can be used. You see how quickly this can spiral? Now imagine you're sitting there as a passenger. You weren't driving. You didn't commit any traffic violation. But now you're being questioned like you're part of something bigger. This is where a lot of people make a critical mistake. They start over-explaining. I was just with him because we stopped earlier at, I don't really know, I just got in the car. Every extra word adds more material, and sometimes it adds inconsistencies you don't even realize you're creating. Let me slow this down for a second because this part matters more than people think. Silence, used properly, is not suspicious. But most people don't know how to use it without making the situation feel tense. When officers ask repeated questions, especially after you've already answered, they're not confused. They're testing consistency. They want to see if your story changes under pressure, and pressure changes people. Voices crack, timing shifts, words get mixed up, and suddenly something completely innocent starts sounding questionable. Now back to the Florida scenario. At some point during the interaction, the deputy's tone reportedly shifted. That's another key moment that people overlook. Officers often adjust their tone intentionally. They may start calm, then become more authoritative. Or they may appear relaxed to lower your guard. Both approaches serve a purpose. If they go firm, it's to assert control. If they go friendly, it's to encourage talking. Either way, the goal is the same: gather information. And when they decide to detain everyone, even without clear probable cause, it creates a situation where people feel like they have no choice but to comply fully, even beyond what's legally required. Let's talk about documents for a second. When an officer takes your license and registration, that's standard. But here's something subtle that many drivers don't think about: how long those documents are held. If an officer holds onto your documents longer than necessary while continuing unrelated questioning, that can effectively extend the stop. And most people don't push back, not because they're guilty, but because they don't want to make things worse. That fear is real, and officers know it. Now imagine this. One deputy is speaking to the driver, another is speaking to a passenger, and maybe a third is observing quietly. That's not accidental. That's coordinated. They're comparing stories in real time. And if even one detail doesn't match, that can become the justification for further detention. But here's the part that caught attention in this case. Despite all the questioning, all the observation, and all the time spent detaining everyone, nothing substantial was found. No clear evidence, no confirmed wrongdoing that justified the level of control used. And when that gets exposed on camera, it raises serious questions. Because the camera doesn't just capture words, it captures tone, timing, behavior. It shows how long people were held. It shows how questions were asked and how they were answered. It shows hesitation. It shows pressure. And it shows whether the escalation matched the situation. Now I want to shift your focus for a moment to something that happens in a lot of these stops. And this is where things can quietly go wrong for drivers. Being asked to step out of the vehicle. Most people feel like this is optional. It's not always. Officers do have the authority, under certain circumstances, to order drivers and sometimes passengers out of the vehicle for safety reasons. But the moment you step out, the dynamic changes. You're no longer inside your controlled space. You're now fully in theirs. Your movements are more visible. Your reactions are more exposed. And any small gesture, reaching, turning, adjusting, can be interpreted in ways you didn't intend. Now imagine this layered on top of being detained without clear cause. You're standing on the side of the road, multiple deputies around, questions coming from different directions. Do you have anything illegal on you? Mind if we take a look in the vehicle? Why are your stories not matching up? Even if you've done nothing wrong, that kind of environment creates pressure. And under pressure, people make decisions they wouldn't normally make, like consenting to a search when they didn't have to. That's another big one. Consent searches happen all the time, and they don't require probable cause, just your permission. And here's how it often plays out. Do you mind if we take a quick look? It sounds harmless, casual, almost routine. But once you say yes, you've just opened the door completely. And in situations like the Florida incident, where suspicion isn't clearly established, consent becomes the shortcut. Now let me take you back to something I hinted at earlier, the mistake most people make that quietly escalates everything. It's not yelling. It's not refusing outright. It's not even arguing. It's talking too much, too soon, without understanding the purpose behind the questions. People think cooperation means explaining everything. But in reality, uncontrolled talking creates opportunities for misinterpretation. And once a narrative starts forming in an officer's mind, it's very hard to reverse, especially if multiple deputies are involved and reinforcing that narrative among themselves. Now think about how this feels from the officer's perspective for a moment. They're trained to look for patterns, to identify inconsistencies, to assume that small details matter. So when they hear slightly different answers or notice hesitation, they don't see normal human behavior under stress. They see potential deception. That's the lens they're operating through. And unless you understand that, you're playing a game where the rules aren't obvious. Back to the exposure part. When footage of incidents like this comes out, What people often focus on is whether the officers were right or wrong. But what's more important is understanding how quickly a routine stop can shift into something much more serious without clear justification. And more importantly, how your behavior influences that shift. Because even when officers overstep, your actions in the moment still matter. Staying calm isn't just about avoiding escalation, it's about maintaining clarity in a situation designed to create confusion. Choosing your words carefully isn't about being evasive, it's about not unintentionally complicating something simple. And knowing your boundaries isn't about being difficult, it's about understanding where the line actually is. In the Florida case, the exposure didn't happen because someone argued louder. It happened because everything was recorded, and when reviewed later, the actions didn't align with the justification. That's a powerful reminder, because in real time it's your word against theirs. But on camera, it's behavior against behavior, and behavior tells the real story. So the next time those blue lights appear behind you and that familiar tension starts building, remember this. It's not just about what you did or didn't do before the stop. It's about what happens after. The pause before you answer, the tone you use, the words you choose, and the things you choose not to say. Because sometimes, the difference between a simple stop and a prolonged detention isn't evidence, it's interpretation. And once that interpretation starts leaning in the wrong direction, pulling it back becomes a lot harder than people expect.